Here we go. Okay, so today we're talking about money traumas and what are traumas in the first place and how do they relate to money and how do they stifle or limit our financial success, our financial connection. So, traumas by themselves, how do we describe traumas? Well, one way to describe traumas is when you have an overload of emotions with respect to something that happens in your life. So let's think about that. If you were a kid and your parents are fighting over money and they're having challenges around money and they're yelling and screaming, how does that impact you as a young child? And what stories do you take away from it when you are obtaining your dynamics around this thing called money? And what we're talking about today is how to identify where you carry money traumas. And by the way, we all have money traumas. It's something that's been passed down to us by our own parents. And secondly, how do we address and heal these traumas so that they don't get in the way of our relationship and our connection with money? And when I talk about relationship and connection with money, it's really interesting because many people don't realize that the relationship with money has a dynamic, that your relationship with money may be different than my relationship with money, may be different than someone else's relationship with money. And the relationship that we hold with this thing called wealth determines how close, how intimate you become with it. Think about that. Think about a person who has a relationship with money that is based on resentment. Think about a person who has a relationship with money that is based on anger, and a person who has a relationship with money based on regret. How likely is it that the person who has this type of relationship with money, oftentimes a secret relationship with money, how likely is it that this person has intimacy with money? And when we talk about intimacy, what is intimacy when it comes to money? What is it? What does it mean to have intimacy with money? You see, most of the time we've been taught that having a sense of closeness with money is an evil thing. But the truth is that money is an energy that we all need and we all use in our everyday life. So the more intimate and the more healthy your intimacy can become with money, the easier of a time you'll have navigating this entire life. And when we have dysfunction in our relationship with money, all things in our life become frustrating, don't they? Isn't it true that when you have a challenging time financially, that you're oftentimes more short-tempered and in a state of survival? So what we're doing today is we're looking at how to identify where we have resentment towards this thing called money and how to address the resentment so that it's no longer a pain point. It's no longer a secret anger that we hold towards this entity called wealth. So, a little bit background about me so you understand where I'm coming from. I started off as a war refugee. I came to America at the age of 8 with no money, no friends, and no language. In other words, imagine if I took you and dropped you off in a African country where you didn't speak the language, you had zero money, you had no friends, and I said to you, okay, start your life here and now, right? And so from that moment, I started to reconfigure life. And when you start from that level of basic life, you start to take a look at things from a very fundamental, rudimentary space. And you start assessing things and determining whether they have value. And one of the things I remember watching is my parents' relationship with money. And my parents' relationship with money was actually something that was evolving. I saw them go from having an abundance mentality towards money when we lived in Iran and they had plentiful amounts of financial success, to going into a space of scarcity and financial worry. How many of you grew up with parents who had financial worry all the time? How many of you grew up with parents who, when they referred to money, it was always under a negative context? So, when I was growing up, my mom and dad had many financial challenges, many financial obstacles, and disasters that they had to face. And not knowing how to deal with these financial obstacles, they did what most people do. They struggled and they survived and they fought their way through. Looking back, we now know that fighting and struggling and surviving isn't the way to navigate challenges. There are easier ways to do that, especially when it comes to money. And I'm going to share with you about that in a moment. Okay, so here I am talking to you about my parents' relationship with money, and watching my parents handle their money issues left an imprint in my mind. It left an imprint in my mind. And for me, the lessons that I received around money, and check this out, see if this applies to you as well. The lessons I received around money was it's hard to get. You got to be careful when you have it. Everyone's going to try to take it away from you. And it's very hard to keep. And when you keep the money, usually something goes wrong because they didn't know how to manage the money. And essentially, life is all about working really hard to make as much money as you can and hoping that it doesn't fall away and somebody doesn't take it away from you so that you can go make it again. Think about that type of a dynamic. Think about that type of a construct that I was given around money. And it's not even my parents' fault. This is the story I made up around money. And the question that I have for you in this chat is, what stories have you made up around money? And oftentimes it's hard to recognize. It takes some real reflection to ask yourself, wait, what are my stories and thematics around this thing called money? What are the dynamics that I rely on when it comes to my relationship with money? And what I would say to you is that when you start to take a look and inventory and evaluate the financial stories that you have around what money looks like, how it works, when it comes, when it goes, you get to see a pattern for yourself. The pattern I saw for myself was that money is very temperamental and it comes and goes, and I don't have a lot of control over it other than working really hard to get it and hoping that it comes in. And once it comes in, I better be really careful. I better be really worried about it because it's about to leave. That was the story that I had. Even not more than a story, that was the experience I was living under, right? And so when you start to look at the stories that you live under and you start to pay attention, you're going to pay attention. What does that mean? That means you're going to give intentional energy towards how you experience your relationship with money. And instead of just transacting money, instead of just giving and receiving, can you pay attention and be conscious of the energetics of what happens when you give? Emotionally, what comes up for you when you give? And what happens when you receive? And emotionally, what comes up for you when you receive? And this here is what we call money trauma. Money trauma is when we start to pay attention to how the money makes us feel on the incoming and on the outgoing. And I like to use a construct, which I teach within my men's organization, called the radical honesty construct, where we look at 11 emotions from happy, joy, grateful, love, excited, to sad, angry, scared, shy, shame, jealous. And when we look at these emotions, we start to identify what emotions come up for you when you spend money. And I'm not talking about when you give a buck to somebody, but when you like really spend a reasonable, significant amount of money, what emotions are present for you? And right there, when you start to pay attention to the emotion, wow, I just gave somebody $100, and wow, the first emotion that I feel is scared, and I feel sad. Oh shit. And I feel shy. Okay. And instead of me judging and being alert around these emotions and running away from them, what happens if I start to look at the emotions and say, wow, the emotions I feel around money when I pay somebody are sad, scared, and angry? Wow, okay, let me find out, let me investigate where the sad, where the scared, where the angry comes from for me. And when you start to investigate where the core emotions are generated from, you can start to actually heal. Let me give you a parallel example. Parallel example. Almost everybody in this room has been in a relationship. And when you're in a relationship with someone, a human being, there's emotions that come up for you. When the person leaves the house to go to work, there's certain emotions that come up for you. When the person is not coming home on time, there's certain emotions that come up for you. When the person is hard to get a hold of, wow, you get scared, you start to worry sometimes, right? The same emotions that you have towards another human being, if they're left unaddressed, what starts to happen is your relationship with the other human being starts to become more and more spread apart. You start to find distance because with distance, there's safety. And the same goes towards money. When emotions around money are left unaddressed, what starts to happen naturally is you start to find distance with the money because distance equates to safety, believe it or not. And the solution of this is to do the opposite. The opposite is when the emotions arrive around money, instead of avoiding them, instead of overcoming them through brute force, what I'd like you to do is to start to address them. And addressing them is an entire life experience. It's not just a 1, 2, 3 done. It's actually a life journey. It's a meditation. It's a healing path. And before you start thinking, oh my God, it's going to take me years and lifetimes to heal my money traumas, let me tell you that all of this can be done with ease and grace. All of it is just a choice, it's a decision. And when we live life through choice, when we live life intentionally, all of the changes that we want to make into our path are very, very easy. They're just a change in choice. And when we live from a space of passivity, when we live in a space of unconscious decision making, which is also a choice, what we notice is that things take a lot of time. Side note, for those of you who are here, my name is Soleil Rad, and I am the founder of an organization called Men of Means. And the root of this organization is based on reminding men how to live a life of choice. And this is called a life of intentionality. And intentionality is what is your desire? What is your true desire? And most people, 99% of human beings, do not know their desires in a very finite way. Most human beings, they know their desires very generically. And therefore, the results that they receive in life are very generic. And when you start to ask yourself the deeper questions around what is my deepest desire in this moment, every moment is a choice point. So when you start to choose in the moment, which is actually a muscle, because most of us have had our conscious mind asleep. We've been told that certain processes and certain patterns of behavior are ones that we need to just do without thinking. And when you start to live your life from a space of conscious choice, which means every moment, what is my decision? What starts to happen is your results start to become really specific. They're no longer generic. So in this moment, my wish to you, my desire for you, my blessing for you is that you start to become aware of every moment of your life. This is what Eckhart Tolle calls presence, because when you are fully present and you practice the science, and it's not even a science, it's like going to the gym. When you go to the gym, you start to exercise your muscle, right? And when you have a muscle, you can use the muscle more often. The muscle here is the muscle of intentionality. And intentionality is about how do I make choices every moment that are from a place of true desire, not from a place of what I've been told needs to happen next. This is what Andrew Tate calls getting out of the matrix. When you get out of the matrix, what you're doing is you're no longer surrendering to the pattern of behavior that most human beings have been surrendering to without asking, what is it that I really want in this moment? I'd like you to take a deep breath with me if you're here on this call, and we're going into deep, deep work here. We opened up with money traumas, and now we are looking at how do I choose healing? And in fact, healing is not even a choice because you're already healed. How do I choose a healthy relationship with money? And in order to choose a healthy relationship with money, you first have to detect what are unhealthy relationships with money. And you have to have the courage to call it. Call what? You got to have the courage to call it when you identify an unhealthy behavior with money. An unhealthy behavior. So when you have a behavior that you can detect, oh shit, I just did that. That's not healthy. You got to call it first. This is called ownership. Own your shit. By the way, if you're here, you're watching, you're enjoying this broadcast, I'd love for you to bring some action into the space and maybe put a heart emoji, give me a thumbs up, because that really agitates the algorithm and allows the algorithm to know that this broadcast is actually something that is of value to the viewers. So if you're getting value, which I know you are, that's why you're hanging out here, is put something in the chat, give me a thumbs up, maybe a middle finger, whatever it takes, just so the algorithm says, boom, this chat is fire. Okay, great. We're talking about money traumas, and we're talking about how to understand, how to detect. What is it to detect? Detect is like a metal detector, right? You go through the airport. By the way, a lot more people came into this broadcast because the algorithm is now picking up on the activity that's been created by the people who are already here. Thank you, everybody. Dustin, Beta, all the rest of the people that are here. I appreciate you. So when we detect something, what we're saying is kind of like a metal detector. We are becoming more conscious, more available, more aware of what is happening inside. When you think about a metal detector, the metal detector picks up what's happening inside because it's paying attention to the inside, not to the outside. The metal detector is not picking up what you're wearing on your clothing, what perfume you're wearing, the colors of your hair. No, the metal detector is calibrated to specifically pick up exactly what it's looking for, which is what's on the inside. And you get to have a detector inside of you that is detecting all of the ups and downs emotionally when it comes to your money transactions. What does that mean? That means moving forward, every money transaction you have, whether it's on the giving or receiving side, I'd like you to be conscious and detect what emotions come up for me in this moment. And a great way to detect them is using the 11 emotions that I shared earlier, which we share within our men's group called Men of Means. It is the 11 emotions. Starts with love, happy, grateful, joy, excited, goes to sad, scared, shy, shame, angry, jealous. And within these emotions, which come up for you every time you transact. And what you start to notice is every time if you transact and you feel scared, or every time you transact you feel angry, or every time you transact you feel shame, there's a healing space for you right there. And here's what you're going to do to heal it. Super easy. Super easy, takes a little courage. Now, you really want to heal your money traumas, you got to take action. You can't just look at the trauma and say, wow, this is really intense and damn, I wish I could heal this. Just like with any type of healing, you get to be courageous. And to be courageous means that you're going to break the pattern. And breaking the pattern takes courage. It's scary because most of us have been taught to find safety in shitty patterns. How many of us and our family members have found safety in really shitty patterns? And you, my friend, are no longer looking for safety in shit. And what you're going to do is you're now going to start to use courage. What does it mean to do courage to heal your money traumas? It means that you're now going to call forth the trauma out loud. Out loud. Here's an example. When I started healing my money traumas, and by the way, it's a never-ending experience because you pick up new patterns that you constantly have to be aware of and get rid of. Over your life, you will constantly pick up new patterns. We just intention that the patterns that we pick up are positive patterns, conscious patterns, and not unconscious, reactive, survival patterns. Okay? So, when we're looking at healing money traumas, A, identification, what is the emotion that comes up? B, is ownership. Ownership. How willing are you to own your shit? How willing are you to own that you're feeling scared around money all the time or some of the time? How willing are you to own that you feel shame based on where you are financially? How willing are you to own that you are scared to make more money because you saw what it did to your family? You see, the more we have the courage to own, the more we start to release the shackles of the trauma. Because the trauma is a hidden shame that you likely carry based on the experiences that you've had around money. And when you bring the shame to the light, just like with any type of trauma healing, many people have had sexual trauma, childhood trauma, all kinds of trauma. And the way that they heal it is to reveal it by talking about it and saying, hey, I had these traumas. It's affected my life in this way. Here's how it's impacted me. Here's how it's benefited me. Here's how it's kept me safe. And the more you start to own the thing that you detected, and remember, you got to detect it first, because if you don't detect it, what are you owning? Nothing. But when you start to own the emotion that you realize comes up when you spend or when you ask for money, what starts to happen is that the emotion starts to actually dissipate. It no longer has a hold on you. And what starts to happen is you go from feeling shame around money, you go from feeling sad around money, you go from feeling angry around money to feeling grateful. Pure gratitude. Pure gratitude. And what that looks like when you're in a space of healing, what that looks like when you're in a space of connection with money, is what it looks like when you're in a space of healing and connection with any partner that you have. When you've had partners in your life that are good in the relationship that they have with you, what's the emotions that come up? Usually love and gratitude. And when your partner says, hey, listen, I'm going on a trip, I'm going to Las Vegas and I won't be back. And you say, when are you going to be back? And the partner says, I don't know when. If you're in a healthy relationship, you feel love. You say, okay, great, go for it. I'll be right here. I'll wait for you. No worries. Just like money goes, you're like, no worries. I love you anyway. But when you're in an unhealthy relationship with another human or with money, when it goes away, you start to worry. You start to get frustrated. You start to get antsy. And that itself is a sign of trauma, because you know that in any healthy relationship, It's pure love, it's pure gratitude. And when your spouse says, "Hey, listen, I'm going to walk away and take a break and I'll be back," you say, "Thank you. Good for you. I'll be right here. I trust you. I support you." So, here we are looking at how to own our power. And owning our power means that we get to take responsibility for all of our actions. And this means that if you are struggling with money, if you're struggling with relationships, whether it's with money or with people, the best thing you can do is to own what is yours. And if the challenge is yours, the story is yours, the emotions are yours, the traumas are yours, owning it means bringing it to the light, no longer hiding it, no longer running away from it, and having the courage to actually discuss it, having the courage to say, "Hey, listen, I struggle with this. I notice that I have a challenge around this, and I want to talk about it. I want to own it. I want to see what happens if I no longer hide it." I'll share with you a story for myself. When I started to learn about these tools and techniques, and all of them are mine, I came up with them myself because I had so many money traumas. Think about it, being a refugee bomb shelter survivor. What kind of traumas come up with that around money? Being an immigrant, going from the Middle East to America at the age of 8, a lot of traumas, money traumas on top of them, right? Being a non English speaking kid, going to English speaking schools, getting beat up, all of these became traumas for me. And initially, I did what most people do. What most people do is they hide the trauma, they minimize it, they pretend that everything is fine, that they're taken care of, and that they're perfect. And what I started to notice was that no matter how much I would try to pretend, these traumas, these challenges, these secrets were actually affecting me louder and louder and louder as I grew up. So I took the leap of faith and I said, what would happen if I actually revealed all of these challenges instead of hiding them all the time? And it was one of the scariest things about in my life because sharing your weakness seems like it's going to hurt you, but in fact, it helps you because when you share your weakness, you're no longer weak. When you share your weakness, you're no longer weak. You're actually owning it. And who can fuck with a person who's owning their weaknesses, who's saying, "Hey, this is the challenge that I'm going through, and I own it, and I'm grateful for it, and I'm going to heal it." Right? So, here, what we're looking at is owning our money challenges. Now, what we want to own, what we don't want to own is the story. What we want to own is the emotion. What do I mean by that? I don't want you to walk around and say, "Hey guys, I want to own it. I have a lot of challenges with money and I have a hard time making money and I never knew how to make money and I'm horrible at making money and every time I make money, I mess it up." That's a story. That's not the truth. That's a story. But the truth is the underlying emotion. Watch this. Guys, I want to own that every time I deal with large amounts of money, I feel really scared and I feel really shy as well because I wonder if I'm messing it up. I wonder if I'm deserving anything. These are the stories that I hold. But the truth is, I feel a lot of scared and a lot of shyness when it comes to my money. And when you start to talk about it that way in front of people, it actually starts to dissipate because you start to realize that you no longer are being shackled. So let me share with you a quick story about this, and then we're getting ready to wrap it up here. I started to realize that I had money traumas, and I made the commitment to myself that I would reveal. I remember one time going to a restaurant with my friends, and when the bill came out, I felt into my emotions and I realized, oh my God, I feel scared because now I have to pay a lot for the dinner. And the story didn't matter, but the emotion of scared was what I was very curious about. And when the bill came out, I actually announced it. I said, friends, I was with 4 people. I said, hey, I want to share something with you. I'm going to pay for my bill tonight. And I feel really scared to talk about this, but I feel scared and a little bit shame around paying for the bill because I have some traumas that I'm working through when it comes to my finances. But I realize that when I talk about it around my scared, around my shame, that it becomes a little easier. So thanks for letting me share. Boom, I paid for the bill. Imagine what that did for me. Imagine what that did for me when I started to own my fear. Do you think I got more scared afterward or less scared? And what I started to do is I started to chase and hunt every single one of my money traumas until I was able to clear them. I try my best even to today to announce any emotions that I hold around money because I know that when the money emotions start to accumulate, I start to go into isolation. So, my prayer for you today is for you to detect and be intentional about all of your money emotions. And as you start to find the emotions that come up for you when you pay for something big or when you ask for something big, I want you to have the courage to start to reveal the emotion. The saying I have is you cannot heal what you don't reveal. So if you want to heal it, start to reveal it. Brothers and sisters, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so grateful that you joined me on this call. Money, the spiritual laws of money. I'll see you next time. Join, subscribe, and like this video if you want to hear more. See you soon. Ciao.